We're here with Dr. Melissa Fogarty to talk about fostering collaboration between general and special education, best practices in co-teaching and supporting new teachers through the process. So, Dr. Fogarty, I'm going to give it to you to let you introduce yourself.
So I will tell you just briefly about myself because I think you guys are the most important ones that are in the room. Yes, Megan, I believe so. I think we're recording it. So that was on this first slide. So let me go back here and tell you that, oh, I'm going the wrong way, that we are recording. I'm hoping that you guys will participate with your cameras on. It's so much better to talk to humans, but if you feel uncomfortable with that, I'm okay with that too. And then I will have a lot of time to chat. So hopefully we can chat. Hello, Dr. Hill Jackson. So about me, I need to tell you the first realities that you need to know about me at this very moment. I am in a room in my office, and the next office over is my son in his guitar lessons. So if you hear some solos behind me, it's my son. We had to have this was at the same time. So I was trying to find a place where it was quiet and have not had any luck in that. So if you hear some guitar, it's him. And I also have a cat that will usually visit me in every Zoom meeting I'm in. So those are some realities that I'm sorry that we're dealing with. But as far as who I am, just brief, I was schooled in Texas. I went through 3 universities in Texas. I taught public school in Texas, both special and general education. I was a co-teacher for a couple of years, and I currently teach the future Texas teachers. And so Texas teachers are important to me, and Texas students are important to me. And so when I see the little logo that says we teach Texas, that means a lot to me personally, because that's what I have spent the past 20 years doing. I've been in a Texas school teaching, working, or teaching new teachers. So I was very honored to ask to be here. And I hope that we can make it a fun afternoon, because I know it's a hard part of the year. So having said that, this is the time of year that we're all frazzled. We may be a little frazzled, but we are all frazzled. So there is some level of frazzle, and it's April, and I cannot believe that you guys have logged on. So I'm super, super thankful for that, because it is that time of year where we're all hanging on for dear life. So I understand that this has been a super difficult year, and you have lots of things to do, lots of other places to be. And in some of us, it might be pretty stormy where you are. So I really do appreciate your time. The baby goats are just because I have this really idealistic vision that if I had a baby goat, like my life would be complete and I wouldn't be stressed out. So that's my peaceful thing. My husband says it would be the opposite, that I have more stress, but I don't know, we'll see. So there's baby goats show up in a lot of my lectures at school when I'm trying to stay stress-free. Oh, there's another one. So our norms today, I'm just the facilitator. I'm going to share some information, but you guys are the experts. I already talked to Janisa. She's living this right now. Some of you are living it, breathing it. So I'm hoping that our role is that we can learn together and share some ideas as we go through. So I'm hoping that we can have some positive and productive conversations. It's that time of the year where it feels kind of heavy, and some of us may feel like negative Nellies sometimes. I know I have to watch myself this time of year, but let's try to keep some positive momentum and think about how we can solve some problems that we're facing with co-teaching. And I am a firm believer that you can't teach without community. So we're going to build fast and furious community, and there's going to be lots of spots for us to just chat. And this is no big deal, off the cuff. Let's just get together. Let's know each other. Let's do this thing. So up first on our fast and furious style, fast and furious community building. What is your favorite duo? What are 2 things or 2 people that go together that are better together? So what are 2 things? I'm going to show you a couple of mine to get you started. We have to have the Bay and Jay. For some of us, so we like the Rocks music. We have Richie and John Bon Jovi. There's no Bon Jovi without them. Tuesdays are always better with tacos. We got Thelma and Louise, and those Tito's and Club Soda. We cannot have one without the other. So what are some duos? PB and J. Can't have one without the other. Chocolate and peanut butter, like peanut butter, those Reese's. Yeah, like the Reese's peanut butter cups. All right. See if anybody else has any. Hi, Amy. How are you today? I see you. Let's see. Anybody else have any Fast and Furious? Say that again, Amy.
I said, hey, I'm doing good. I'm
Oh,
glad to
good.
be here.
Good. I'm glad you're here. Rice and beans. Perfect. All right. So our next question. Ooh, I bet you make some really good collard greens and cornbread. Probably.
Amen. Amen, sister.
Okay, we're waiting over here. So that is fantastic. And I showed you some of mine. Our next super fast is, what is your coaching experience with co-teaching? I already know that we have some in here. So just say, I have done it. I have never done it. I'm expert. I am beginning. I'm a principal. Tell me what you, 3+ years. Megan McMurray down the street. Aaron. Singers, okay, 2nd year. So you have some experience, and Valerie has some experience. So perfect. So we are going to talk about some of the reasons why we co-teach. I'm hoping that we can talk about some fun reasons, do a little bit of history, historical background, some evidence. We're going to define co-teaching, review best practices. We'll get to the piece where we can talk about some barriers and some possible solutions. And then we're going to end with talking about strategies to support teachers, especially new teachers in the process. I'm hoping by the end, you'll be able to discuss some best practices and have at least one strategy to support new teachers. So here we go. Just for us, we may have, will you put in the chat, let me think about this, because I know some of us are special educators. So will you please put in the chat if you're a gen, if you're coming from the gen or the SPED point of view, that would be helpful. Got SPED. So for my, there's my gen ed. So your principal comes to you, she's in the cute orange shirt, and she says, you know what? I have something to tell you. You're going to be that co-teach class next year, right? And so you're like, And so I don't want you to tell me, but I want you to think about the first time that you heard that, especially if you're a general education teacher, which we have several of them here. What were your initial thoughts? Like your deep down first initial thoughts, at least the first time. You're probably like, oh my gosh, somebody's going to have to watch me teach. There's going to be another human in my room. Am I going to have to share my stuff? Where are there people going to be? This is scary. Am I going to get those students? You're going to have all of these thoughts rushing through your head. And so I'm here hopefully to convince you that it is a good thing and it can be kind of fun. So we're going to talk about why co-teaching is a worthy adventure. So the fun things we can do and historical and legal reasons and evidence behind it. So first of all, here's just a list that I generated. So I'm hoping you guys can add some to the list, but some fun things you can do when there's 2 adults in the room is you can role play. You can read different parts of the story. If you're trying to do a lesson and there's collaboration, you can model collaboration. I co-taught for a year with one of my best friends, and we would dress up all the time and be silly like that. We would read different parts and have different voices. There's obviously super easy with behavior to help when somebody is there to monitor with that proximity, maybe with the tokens. If you have a reinforcement strategy in your classroom, there's somebody that can help with data. You can help share the workload. The next one I said we have each other's back. You know, some days are hard. There may be one student that's kind of crawling and you can kind of tag each other out, right? Like, I need you to help me here. I'm having a hard time. You can play to each other's strengths. In ours, you can have a big picture thinker that has all the ideas, and then the other person can kind of help implement the ideas, secret codes and handshakes. If you have a co-teacher that you've worked with for a while, usually you can look at each other and just know what each others are thinking, so that you know, like, oh, I need to go over here and help in that situation. Obviously, if you're having a bad day, you can lean on someone. Teachers do amazing work all the time. So it's kind of nice that somebody can see all the work that you're doing, right? Somebody's like, oh, look, that was a cool lesson. That was really great. Because a lot of times you're doing all these things and nobody knows what you're doing. So it's also a way to have a cheerleader. And I think one of the most important reasons is that you can go to the restroom. Like you can go to the restroom any time of the day when there is another person in your room. So pretty good. So is there anything else that you can think of, since I have some of you who are Gen and Sped? What are some of those things you can do that are fun when you have a co-teacher in your room? Maybe I missed some. Anybody have any more? Maybe we'll think of some as we go through, because oh, good. I'm glad you like those. There's some fun ones. One of my best professional years of my life was when we were co-teaching, and we did, we were wild some days. We had a lot of fun. So there's some fun things you can do. But now we're going to talk a little bit, very, very brief history of why and how we got here. So how did we even get to inclusion and some co-teach in our classrooms? So most of us knows this, and most of us know about IDEA, but in our country, there is a history of exclusion. So not too long ago, children with disabilities were actually excluded from public school. So children would get up and go to school, and if they had a disability, were not often allowed in. So there's lots of court cases where the parents were actually suing the districts and trying to get into the schools because we said, no, it's not going to happen. And so we had this super dark history of exclusion. And then in 1975, the Congress passed the law that is our federal special education law. Okay, so 1975 is when that passed. That wasn't that long ago. And I'm telling you, it wasn't that long ago because that's the year I was born. So it was like, like yesterday, really, yesterday is when that happened. But that law did change everything for our students with disabilities, right? So this law gave us FAPE, which we know is free and appropriate public education for all students. So now students with disabilities can go to school. Okay, and that law, as we know, is called IDEA, for Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. So IDEA gave us FAPE, and it also gave us LRE. So most of us hear this when we're in our ARD meetings, that LRE is our least restrictive environment, because we like the letters, everything's a letter, so we say LRE. And so this is a principle that says that students with disabilities have the right to be educated with children without disabilities to the greatest extent possible. So this is when students need to have access to the general curriculum to the greatest extent. Okay, so there's a continuum of placements that districts must have, but we're really focusing on how all students can access this general curriculum. And who decides? You guys know, you sit in these meetings. I don't have to tell you, but our team decides, made up of the parents and the teachers and administrators, where these children will be served. So, in a recent review of LRE placements in 2020, that we have seen that general education placements have increased, and the more restrictive placements have decreased. So we have seen exponential growth in general education placements for our students with disabilities. So they're being served more and more in the general education placements. So put in the chats, what percentage do you think of students with IEPs are served in the general education classroom? So what percentage of students? Just to throw a guess out there. Oh, and my son's doing a solo. He's wailing in there. Woo, look at you, Amy. Look at you, Val Hill Jackson. Oh, man, you guys have sat in my class. You guys are good. Did you skip? So approximately 60% of students with disabilities are in general ed at least 80% of the time. Of course, this is a national average and it varies per district and state, but nationally, the average is 60% of students with disabilities are in gen ed for at least 80% of the day. And 95% of students with disabilities spend at least some time in the general education setting. So every general education teacher at some point will serve students with IEP. So a lot to think about. But if you stop and think of it from a historical standpoint, like how cool is it that there was a time when not all children were welcome at school? And now all children, no matter what, are able to access the general curriculum. I mean, that's pretty cool if you think about that and from a historical point of view. But how can we support our gen educators and our students with the current trends of including all students in general ed? And that's our co-teaching. That is one way that we can support our general education teachers. It's not the only way, but it's one way, and the way that most districts are going towards. So when we talk about evidence, we're talking about co-teaching is bringing together both professionals' expertise, and I've bolded both in expertise, and we'll talk a little bit about that, to create a learning environment where both the students with disabilities and their peers can excel. So both are excelling with the expertise of both teachers. And there's evidence that all students in the classroom benefit from a co-teaching environment. So a lot of times we think it's just the special education students that are receiving the benefit, but all students in the classroom benefit from having these two expert teachers. So it's not just for the other students, it's for all students. So that's something that we talk a lot about in our program, because it's helpful for everyone. So what is it, and what are some key characteristics? So when we see co-teaching defined, this is actually from TEA, from the resource that I'm going to share at the end that I feel is a must for everyone to have on their shelves. Co-teaching is a service delivery option in which two or more certified professionals share the responsibility, and then I underlined, of lesson planning, delivery of instruction, and progress monitoring for all the students in the classroom. So we have some keywords here: two or more, both certified, share the responsibility of all the things that are happening: lesson planning, delivery of instruction, and progress monitoring. So some key characteristics. These are in the literature. Obviously, we have to share the same physical classroom space, which can sometimes be the hardest part. And oftentimes it's the general education space, right? So the special educator is walking in to the general education classroom. Both should be accountable for all the students in the room, for all outcomes. And there's joint instruction and classroom management. So a lot of times you'll see where one co-teacher, they'll say, that's not my kids, those are not your kids, these are my kids, and they'll have that kind of language. But that the students will also see that there's a difference. But in a true co-teaching, there's no difference. Everybody's sharing instruction and classroom management. And co-planning lessons. It's really helpful. Special educators are really great. I'm going to talk about this again in a minute. Really great at accommodating and modifying your lesson plans. And so coming up with some ideas and working together on ways to serve all students together is fantastic. And then equivalent licensure, meaning that both of them have a certification. So both teachers in the room should have Gen Ed cert and a SPED cert, and equal authority, a true partnership. So these are some of the key characteristics, and sometimes some of them are harder than others, but this is what a true co-teaching definition looks like. I added this. This is one of the things that we talk so much about in our special education program, because I teach future special educators, and they leave our program certified in general education and special education, but we spend most of the time in our program talking about instructional strategies, how to scaffold instruction, how to collect behavior data, what are some strategies for behavior, how do we improve behavior that is super challenging. So we spend a lot of time thinking about these accommodations and modifications, and just a little bit of time on content. So we tell them that your general educator, they spend all their time with their content. So they are the content experts. And they are in a relationship with you where you are the accommodation and modification behavioral strategy expert. And so you come together, it's a marriage of content and strategies, and you need each other to serve all those students in the classroom, because our special educators don't always know all the content, but we know how to break it down for students that need help. So I say this in our class, like, if you're a gen ed teacher, you can say this one on the left-hand side. Do you, content expert, take this accommodation and behavior strategy expert to provide strategies and support to help all students access the lesson as long as you both shall teach. And then our special educator says, do you, accommodation and behavior strategies expert, take this content expert to provide high quality content to all students in the class as long as you both shall teach. And then we say, I do. And then we move into a beautiful marriage. Although most of us who are married know that that is not always easy, right? Marriage is awesome 80% of the time, but there are some times that are super challenging, right? And especially sometimes in our co-teaching, let's face it, sometimes they're arranged marriages and we don't pick our partner, right? So somebody, the principal says, you are in that room with that person. And so you have to figure out a way to work together as a team in this co-teaching marriage. So I always stress to my general education teachers that lean in on your special educator. They are trained to help you scaffold your lessons and accommodate for your students. And I tell my special educators, lean in on the content experts, let them create the lessons and you help with the other parts of breaking the lesson down for the students and accommodating. So that is a lot. Are we doing okay? Everybody fine? Okay. We're going to go in a couple minutes. I'm going to open back up for you. So most of you have seen these models. These are also in the TEA resource I'm going to show you. And most of us are used to, especially this first one, where it's the one teach, one drift around and kind of help, and the one teach, one observe. So those are the two that you see often. That's usually the one our special educator is drifting around or observing. And then there's the team teach, where you're actually teaching the lesson at the same time. This might be helpful if you're doing some of that role playing, if there's a new strategy that you're trying to teach the students. Then you have the parallel teach, where the teachers break in the room into two groups and teach the same thing, but in smaller groups. You may be able to do some purposeful grouping in this place so that you can differentiate your instruction. Then we have our station teaching, which is two teachers teaching two different things, kind of like the centers. And then the alternative teaching, where we have maybe two different contents again going on. The teacher's teaching a whole group and then a small group at the back of the room. So this is some of the models that we see. Most of the time it is the one teach, one drift, one teach, one observe. So what are some of these models that you have tried? Anybody like to share what they've tried frequently or ever? Besides, if it's a different model, either in chat or off the mic. Drift, lots of drifters. Janisa, you're in a co-teaching model right now. Are you guys doing the drifting?
Yeah, so we do the drift. I've done a couple of the alternative kind of, where I pulled out a small group and taught like a different level of the content. I mean, it's the same content, but highly modified. And then I've done some team teaching as well.
Some team, so you're both teaching at the same time? Like the same lesson, I guess, at the same time?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Super fun.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. So I put here, usually I just said get wacky. We only have a couple weeks left of school. So if you haven't tried anything other than the one teach, one observe, or drift, I think the next couple weeks is a fun time to try something new and wacky. So just challenge yourself to get wacky. Try something new. Here's some best practices that, again, you see in the literature that obviously one of the best things that we can do, which is depends on our administration, is that regular and protected meeting times. That's the hardest part of co-teaching, is finding that time, meeting with our person, and actually doing some planning together. The next one I think is super important is defining our roles and our responsibilities, like who's going to do what and when. And we're going to talk a little bit more about this when we talk about strategies, but really making it clear who is in charge of what, so that there's no miscommunication, which is the next piece, the communication piece, right? Making sure we're clear. And then having the mutual respect. Sometimes, not all the times, but a lot of times our special educators feel like they go into a room and they are not have the equal partnership with their general education teacher in the eyes of their students or the general educator. So trying to make sure that everybody has something to offer. We already talked about how we're experts in what we bring to the table, and making sure that we respect all the sides and taking the other person's perspective. And then being flexible and learning together, taking risk, because I think that's super hard. Amy did some team teaching. Amy, I wish you were team teaching with me on this right now. You want to? If I would have known Miss McMurray would have been in here, I would have made her team teach with me too. Okay, so we have, I put down here that our don't forgets, that we're talking about positive and productive conversations, but what are some barriers that you have faced with the co-teaching, and what are some things that you've done to overcome those barriers? Anybody have anything that's been really challenging and ways that you've overcome that?
Melissa, do you mind if I speak instead of type? Is that okay?
I would love to hear you speak.
So I had experience with a co-teacher last year. She's moved on to do something else. She and her husband relocated, but she was a resource teacher like I am. And so she had my experience, I guess. And but we had totally different behavior management philosophies. And so that was really, really hard to manage. And we would often recalibrate to we would maybe debrief at the end of a tough day and just kind of recalibrate what we saw, how we perceived it, and then our ideas for addressing it or something similar in the future, so that we were on the same page. Because I'm a little more flexible, a little more, I don't know if tolerant is the right word, but I'd rather redirect than maybe directly address all the time.
Right. Kind of choosing your battles situation.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, makes sense. So you were having a hard time with different philosophies, but so that was your barrier, but you were overcoming that barrier by having direct conversations about it and trying to figure out where you guys can get on the same page. So I think that's probably one of the things that is the hardest about co-teaching, is finding the time to do that, but then reconciling your different backgrounds, right? And especially if you have somebody, it's interesting that she was a special educator, but it's when you even come into with general education teachers and special education teachers too, with completely different trainings, it could be even more challenging. So thank you, Megan. I like it when I hear your voice. Anybody else have anything?
Dr. Melissa, thank you for your presentation today. I love the metaphor earlier where you talked about co-teaching in this relationship, almost like a marriage of sorts. So it seems to me, because I didn't do hardly any of this before, I did a little bit of drifting early in my career, but that's it. But it seems to me that establishing that relationship very early on is super, super important. Any recommendations for how to create some bonding and warp speed?
Yes, I do. We're gonna in a couple of slides, we're gonna get that. Yeah. Oh, Megan says start with Margs. I should co-teach with you, Megan. And then Janisa says timing. Yeah, planning lessons and activities with enough time to accommodate and modify before class. Give list of what I need to co-teacher. That's really great. I think that's the hard time in education, I think, is the barrier that's the hardest to overcome for almost everything, right? That's always the top of the list is time. But that's a great one, Janisa. So I'm going to skip to the part where we can think about some other strategies on how to do some of this. And again, I'm hoping that you guys will have some things to share, but we recap, talked about why, we did a little bit best practice. We talked about the different models, and we did a little bit of that brainstorming. So now we're going to think about but how, and some of my ideas, some of the things that have worked for me, some of the things that I've seen work with my students. And then I have a place where I would love to hear more about what you guys have to offer, because you guys are living it. I've lived it, I'm teaching it, and you guys are currently living it. So the experts. But first, work with me here, stay with me here. I know I'm getting some faces, but stay with me here. Chat it up. What is the best meal that you make? Those are enchiladas. Full disclosure, Valerie Hill Jackson, Dr. Hill Jackson on here is a cook. I am not. I cook to feed my people, but I do not cook to I'm like a utilitarian, just feed people, right? So I want you to put in the chat, what is your favorite meal that you make? Mine is those enchiladas. And it's kind of embarrassing how I make them, so I'm not going to tell you. Megan says Southern green beans, steak, and mac and cheese. Chicken stir fry. Man, linguine with lobster? Dude. Chicken, bacon, and ranch potatoes? I'm not. Reservations, Amy, that's what I'm doing.
That's the one I was laughing at. Reservation.
I'm like, that is what I'm like, takeout, lately DoorDash. That's my favorite meal. Yes, thank you for feeling me on that one. Yeah. Oh, baked chicken. Ooh, I don't even know how to say some of those things. And that looks really good. Sweet banana. Wow. All right. Okay, so here's the challenge. Besides Amy, she might be missing out on her challenge, but here's her challenge. I have these like really kind of clunky enchiladas that I use from like all the cans and stuff. So it's really embarrassing, not really good stuff. So Chrissy Teigen, everybody know her? She is married to John Legend. She's super good at cooking. She cooks all the time on Instagram. She's always on live, always cooking on Instagram. She always looks like that while she's cooking on Instagram. Okay, so she invites us to her house. She's got this beautiful kitchen, and we have to cook our meal, so my enchiladas, at her house in her kitchen. Pretty intimidating. At least I'm intimidated. I don't know if all of you are, but I'm intimidated. So my question to you is, what does she need to do to help you feel more comfortable in her space, in her kitchen? So what are some things she needs to do? So I'm thinking about this as we're walking into her space, and I'm thinking about it as a special educator, making the analogy of walking into a general education teacher space. What are some things we have to do? So we got to bring some supplies. We got to show me around. Where am I going to go? Right? What am I going to do? Show me around a kitchen. What can I use? Where's all the stuff? Because you don't want to be going through all the drawers, right? I mean, you kind of want to know what's in John Legend and Chrissy Teigen's drawers, but you probably should wait till she says, you could look in those drawers, right? Give me my own space. Let me tell you, is it KHS Michelle? That is a huge one. Giving my own space. How much access to a fridge and pantry do I have? Can I even get in their refrigerator? Should I do that? Oh my gosh, that is true. So believe it or not, these are some of the things that I hear from our pre-service teacher and our new teachers all the time that are co-teaching, right? If you're an established teacher and you've been doing this for a little bit, it's a little bit easier to walk into somebody else's space and own it. But when you are new and you are pre-service, or this is your first time to co-teach, walking into a general education teacher space is the first and the hardest step, because you don't know where to put your things. You don't know what's off limits. And so that's one of the things I really stress, is thinking about that. And really welcome the person, the partner, the pre-service teacher, and you can tell when it's a real warm welcome and when it's not. And then just like we guys said here, like, show them where to put their belongings. Where can they have a place in the room? Where do you put your purse, right? Where do I put my purse? Where do I put my stuff? Our pre-service teachers say, even when they walk into a class for field experience, that's the hardest part. Like, they have their backpack or their purse and they're like, where do I put my stuff? And they are like, it's so embarrassing. I have to ask the teacher, like, where do I put my stuff? And then they say things like, when I want to do work, do I sit at the desk? Do I sit somewhere? Like, where is my space? So as the general education teacher, if you're welcoming in a special education teacher, trying to figure out a way to help them feel comfortable, show them around, show them the resources, and give them a space to maybe help them feel more at home in your area. Because I think that's one that is hard to do. But I loved you guys, some of your responses. You all have them all down. So yeah, give me my own space. And then it's still, even if she does all that, it's still a little hard to cook your meal in front of Chrissy Teigen, right? You're still a little nervous about doing that because she is an expert at her kitchen and what she does. So there's that. So that would be my first thing, is really thinking that through. What does it feel like to be in your space? And how can we make this person feel welcome in my space? Whether it's a early field experience, pre-service, or new teacher, it's all the same. The other thing, and I think this is what Dr. Hill Jackson was getting at, is really have some talk. So we're not going to do that mind reading. It sounds like Megan was talking this through with her co-teacher earlier, really talking it through and try to avoid that whole mind reading thing that happens in relationships. So we're going to have direct and intentional conversations about the classroom. Really try to decide some of those big decisions together. Avoid this like our kids, your kids talk. And then, just like Megan was doing, reflect on what's going well and what are some areas of concerns, and set some goals. Obviously, there's lots of icebreakers and activities that you can do, like happy hours, but there's also lots of resources online, like this one, that has pretty directed questions for new co-teachers, so that you can kind of go through them and help start your conversation from this book by Potts and Howard that I really like. So it kind of guides your thought process to make sure that you're on track. So like, hey, like, why are you a teacher? Why are you even here? And so then you can kind of know the person on a teacher level, like, who are you? And then the logistics questions, how will we arrange our classroom? And then, like Megan said, I think classroom management is probably one of the hardest things to tackle together. So like, what are our policies? What's it going to be like? How are we going to manage this together? And then how are we going to communicate? So what are some things that we're going to do to make sure that we're okay as a team? Because at the end of the day, your relationship, whether you realize it or not, is you're modeling for your students what collaboration looks like. So there's lots of questions there to guide you. So yeah, this is online, and Valerie, I can send it to you. If you Google this, How to Co-Teach, this is a great resource and a great book to read. It has a lot of these kinds of resources for you, but I will be sure to email out. So now, when you do that, sometimes you have to do this. And then you have to get back on track, which is a bummer about doing that kind of thing. So hold on. Give me 1 second. I lost my stuff here. All right. Am I still sharing my screen? Okay. I was like, wait, where did it go? I've lost my screen completely, which is okay because I can find it. I have learned this past year, I have taught hybrid college classes. So I teach face-to-face every day, and some students are in front of me but most of them are online. And so I've gotten really quick at adjusting on the fly because this kind of thing happens. So I'm going to find where we are, and then I'm going to reshare my screen. Okay, let me see. It's okay, can you see it now?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you for helping me. So the other big tip, and this is one that I still say all the time to myself when I'm stressed out, is that at the end of the day, trying to focus on the students, because we know that co-teaching can benefit all students. So I have this saying where it's students over adults. I'm going to focus on the students and what the student needs and worry about the adult behaviors later. Right now, the students need this. And so I know that's easier said than done some days, and some days feel really stressful, but that's kind of my motto, is students over adults, and really putting them at the forefront. But when it's done and it's done well, it really can benefit all the students in your class. And this one, baby steps, making sure that we know, give ourselves a little bit of grace. It's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be easy overnight. That the baby steps are very important. And then with your co-teacher, with your pre-service teacher, making an outline, like write it down, a timeline of responsibilities of when things are going to start to shift to a more equal partnerships. If it doesn't happen overnight, how can we get it there with a timeline? So thinking that through intentionally. And a couple more, and then I'm going to open it up to you. I say, think about our dynamic duos. Everybody has a strength. So bring your strength, own your strength, encourage and support your partner's strength. So notice what your partner does and do it well, and tell them that they're doing it well. And I put this to be silly because we're big music people here, that, you know, power struggles break up bands. So making sure that we try to avoid power struggles and really communicate directly and consider all of our viewpoints. And I have one more, my favorite one. This is, I know I have, if you know me, you know I'm a Brene Brown junkie. I listen to Brene Brown all the time, read all of her books, super into Brene Brown. One day she will be my friend. I just haven't figured out how to make that happen yet. But one of the things she says is she does a lot of research on vulnerability. And when I think about co-teaching, I really think about vulnerability, because you are walking into a situation. If you're a general education teacher, this is your space, right? And you get to teach, and not a lot of times, maybe a couple times a year when the principal comes in, you're teaching, it's your world. And now you're sharing your world, and you're having to teach in front of somebody all the time. And it can feel pretty scary. If you're a special education teacher, you're literally walking into the kitchen, to Chrissy Teigen's kitchen, into somebody else's world, and it feels scary to go in there. And you're having to do this, you're having to teach in front of adults, in front of children. You're trying to have to balance this relationship all the time. And it's really scary and kind of hard. It can be kind of embarrassing. And so I love her quotes about vulnerability. And I love that this is, it's not winning or losing. It's having the courage to show up and be seen when we have no control over the outcome. And it's not weakness, it's courage. And she always signs her things awkward, brave, and kind. And I feel like that should be tattooed on my face. I try to be brave and kind, but awkward is definitely the one that's there the most. But thinking of the other person's perspective, thinking about why they're there, that they're there for a reason, to help. And if you can get it together, you have this really amazing opportunity to really help the students that are in front of you, because two is usually better than one. So those are some of my initial right off the bat tips. And I know that you guys have some tips on some things that you have done in the past, or how you've worked with your other people, pre-service or others, that has helped you and your partner become a better team. So any thoughts on that? Any ideas? Oh, no. Everybody's got it. Anybody have anything that worked really well besides, I guess Megan said she had margaritas, which helps. Helps sometimes for sure. Oh, that's sad, Valerie. Why do you think that's the case? Maybe are you working online? Because I think the online part can be super hard this time.
Well, no, I mean, I'm not in the classroom anymore. I'm gonna just say it. But yeah, I always felt that the relationship I had with my co-teacher slash inclusion teacher was always disconnected because they would send them in to co-teach, but it would turn into an inclusion situation, so it never really turned into a co-teach. But I felt like we never really collaborated the way we were supposed to. They kind of just stood back and waited till they can jump in, or they never jumped in. They weren't even there long enough for, I don't know, they just weren't there long enough, in my opinion. I only had them for that short time in class,
Mm-hmm.
and then they would leave and go somewhere else,
Yeah.
which I really didn't understand how that would be so effective if we
Mm-hmm.
only saw them for 15 minutes of math class and then they're gone, you know?
Right.
Um, I kind of feel like sometimes they're told not to jump in as the way they should. I'm not really sure. Like I said, sometimes I feel like it might be that they're not assigned to be a mentor, so they don't mentor, or they don't do anything, or they do mentor when the relationship really isn't one where it's a mentor situation as much
Right.
as it's a collaborating situation. So those are the kind of the things that I felt was going on, where they just kind of hang back, waited, didn't do anything sometimes, and then just
Yeah.
left.
Yeah.
Majority of my experiences in fifth grade co-teach, they hung back, watched the lesson, and then left. So when I looked to them to see if they have anything to add, they didn't add anything,
Right.
which was really disheartening. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think sometimes that's probably a frustration on the special education. The special educator was probably also super frustrated because they're in and out of classrooms and not having that real time. So sometimes that's something that we can't always control, is what administration does, but that's probably something that was probably really frustrating to them as well. Megan, you talked about peer mentoring in the chat. Is that something that works for you guys, and something that you've had success with?
Yes. So, sorry if you hear road noise. We, first and foremost, our admin really respects and protects our collaborative planning time. And so that has really been helpful because we have a common planning. So she meets once a week with her team, and I say her team, and I don't mean it in a derogatory way, but she meets with the ELA content team. They're the experts in the content. They kind of hash out all of the details of the assessments, assignments, projects that they want to do, and then once they've got that kind of nailed down, then we meet 2 days later when she's had time to maybe digest it and start like brainstorming the ways that they want to maybe implement that. And then I kind of come in as the special education expert on modifying or accommodating. And then I try, I hope I do this, maybe Miss Cessna can vouch for me one day, that I try to show my appreciation for the work that she's already put in, and give her kudos for things that, like, oh man, that's a really great accommodation that you kind of picked up without realizing it. That's really awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Or that kind of acknowledging the hard work that she already put into it before I say, okay, but now we need to modify some things for our 2 friends in 3rd period and our 3 friends in 7th period. So I feel like that gives her some encouragement, and I just wanted to make sure that I respected the work that she put into it before I went in and did some changes to the assignment or project or whatever.
Right. And I just want to point out, Dr. Hill Jackson, if you're still there, that Miss McMurray is in College Station and is, when we're in schools, also mentors for our pre-service teachers in the special education program. So it's pretty awesome that we get access, because her team at Welborn is doing really great things. So thank you for that. And I think that you probably would also apply that way of thinking to our pre-service teachers, is helping them help them start it and then give them some feedback. So thanks. Pretty awesome. And it's okay that you're driving. So I know that we're out of time, and a couple extra things for our pre-service teachers that just in general, co-teaching or not, because I know that a lot of you are in the Mentor Academy, is that and some of these things are obvious, but just as a reminder, is that thinking out loud what you're doing and why, because that's one of the things that sometimes our students like, I just want to know what they're doing. And so if you have someone in your classroom, just really do that. Think aloud that we say is good practices for the students when you're teaching. Like if you're teaching your students, you do a think aloud. So help with the pre-service, do a think aloud. What are you doing and why? And then let the students see the IEPs and spend time introducing this to the students and allowing the students to look at the IEPs. Tell the pre-service teachers what the students' needs are and how they can help, and then asking them areas that they would like support in. So asking the teachers like, hey, what is something that you're working on? What do you want support? What do you really want to see modeled? And then again, that baby steps, having them take over small pieces and then pilot some new strategies. So I know we're almost out of time, and I wanted to leave a couple seconds for any more chit chat, but I told you about this resource. We can Google it, or I can send it out. It is amazing. It's produced by TEA and the Statewide Progress in General Curriculum Network. It is templates for lesson plans. It has strategies and ideas. It is so amazing and so worth getting and putting on your shelf. It's a free resource. So hopefully you can get that. It's easy to read. So you can read it at the beach this summer, at the pool, whatever you're doing. And then as a reminder, I put our co-teachers up here at the top, right? Co-teachers are better together, just like all of our other super fun duos. It could be fun to have somebody in there with you doing things.
Thank you all very much, so much for coming to our third Thursday. We really appreciate everybody taking the time out of their day. So thanks very much.